Picture this. You're a surgeon, lancet in hand, you make the cut. The patient doesn't make it. Today, that's a call to risk management, a root cause analysis. Maybe if it's bad enough, a lawsuit. In Babylon, around 1750 BC, that's a call for the executioner because the sentence for that surgeon isn't a fine. It isn't a suspended license. It's a hand. Welcome to the dark side of healthcare. I'm Heather.
I'm Dina.
And as always, we've got Holly with us.
Hey, everyone.
For anyone new to the show, Holly is actually a permanent guest.
I'm in every episode.
We keep calling her a guest, but I don't know if we should just say, and Holly.
She hasn't worked in healthcare, but she is a true crime person, and every single episode, she walks in not knowing what we're covering that day.
And that's not on accident. We never send her the topic. We never send her the script. She hears it for the first time exactly when you do, the listeners.
It's by design, though. Heather and I have spent our careers inside the industry. We know the acronyms. We know why a denial letter says what it says. And then we know what the hospital board is thinking. We stop noticing what's actually shocking about this stuff.
Holly, do you feel like we're talking about you while you're sitting here next to us?
I'm getting a little uncomfortable. Let me get my Tic Tacs out.
I know, I'm watching her and she's like, it's kind of like I'm at the principal's office and they're talking about me. Holly's the person in the room who hasn't lost that reaction yet. If something we're describing makes her stop and say, wait, that's actually legal, that's usually the moment that matters for most of you too. And today we're doing something a little different. There's no single perpetrator, no one hospital. We're going back nearly 4,000 years to find the very first written law that ever held a healer criminally responsible for harming the people in their care. And we're going to trace that punishment for the medical failures all the way from the stone slab in Babylon to the courtroom in Texas.
Here we are in Texas again.
I was like, I knew you were going to bring that up.
Everything happens in Texas.
I have more to come for future episodes that I tried, guys, finding things not in Texas. Texas is just a big state.
Big state, and maybe they're just taking care of business, catching these things.
That's right.
Okay, because the question underneath all of it hasn't changed for 4,000 years, when a doctor hurts you, who pays for that? And if so, how much?
That's correct. So while we are getting ready to do this, we're going to get underneath that question in a second. Like one we're going to keep circling back to today, which is healthcare has never actually been a system without problems. It's always had problems. What's changed isn't whether the problems exist. It's whether anyone does something about them before the patient is hurt or only after. So are you ready?
Yep, let's go.
Yes.
Let's get into it.
Let's get our chariot and horse and buggy going.
Let's do it. So, let's set the scene. Babylon, roughly 1755 to 1750 BC. King Hammurabi. Sorry.
Isn't it Hammurabi?
Hammurabi. Hammurabi. Why do I have moo in there?
No, I'm not sure. I do double
Hammurabi, guys.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. Once again, our resident researcher for knowing how to say words
right off the bat.
Yeah.
I've heard that word before.
Has just unified Mesopotamia. And to keep it unified, he does something no one had really done at this scale before. He puts the law in stone, literally.
That's all they had was stone.
A stone, exactly.
You are right.
You're right, yeah. Almost 8 feet tall. That's a pretty big slab of stone.
Must be a big law.
It covered 282 laws.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And standing in a public square where everyone could see it. So people couldn't act like they didn't know the law because it's in the public square. This is the Code of Hammurabi. Most people know it from history class as the eye for an eye law. Okay. What most people don't know is that a cluster of those laws, roughly laws 215 through 223, are about doctors, specifically surgeons.
And there's an actual ancient law that's just about malpractice.
Yeah.
That's oddly specific for 4,000 years ago.
I-
I mean,
so-
I would have thought there was lots of malpractice. And they knew right what
They
it
knew
was,
right
I
where,
guess.
yeah, they knew like that we need to have one. It's the oldest surviving written criminal law we have that's directed specifically at physicians. Before Hammurabi, medical harm was probably handled through custom or family retaliation or temple priests. Hammurabi is the first time we see a statement that says this is a crime and here is the exact punishment for that crime. Holly, we gave you assignments in this episode, and I know you're not prepared. So we're going to give you a sheet of paper.
Oh, I get to say that word too.
Yes, you do. Would you read the top one for us that's on that paper that we just handed you?
The law, Hammurabi Code, Law 218. If a surgeon performs a major operation on a nobleman with a bronze lancet and causes the man...
Bronze lancet.
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
specific.
Yes. Now, does that mean
It's
that
probably
the
the-
nobleman has a bronze lancet or the
Surgeon.
surgeon is using a bronze lancet?
Surgeon is using a bronze lancet.
Okay, so
I'm pretty sure it's the only metal they used.
Mark.
If a surgeon performs a major operation on a nobleman with a bronze lancet and causes the man's death, or opens a tumor over the eye and destroys the eye.
Wow.
Isn't that one interesting that they're specific about a tumor over the
Well, it
eye?
had to have happened.
Yeah.
Right?
His hand shall be cut off.
Wow.
Hand cut off.
I wouldn't want to practice healthcare, I don't think. Or I'd have to be very sure of myself.
Right?
That's right. To me, that's interesting. Or opens a tumor over the eye. Like,
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you open a tumor over the eye, you're essentially saying that you're blinding this person probably for life.
right. But what about if you open a tumor on the foot
But
and
maybe-
ends up
But
losing their foot?
somebody can hobble.
Oh,
around,
yes,
But
yeah.
their eye,
But
Yeah.
yeah.
they need their hand, and it's interesting they take their hand because that's what they'd use.
Yeah.
Now they cannot
now
use
they
it
can't
to harm
practice. Yeah,
anyone.
exactly. I think there's a way
Yeah.
of taking them out of being able to practice medicine.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Interesting.
So lose your arm or death or loss of an eye during surgery. I mean,
This is one of the earliest examples in human history of a society treating a bad medical outcome as a criminal act rather than just bad luck or the will of the gods or something the family had to sort out privately. Historians aren't sure how often it was enforced. The tablets tell us what the law said, not how often a judge actually ordered it to be carried out. But even as a deterrent on paper, think about what that does for practice in medicine. If a botched operation could cost you your hand, your literal instrument, like we just mentioned, the thing you operate with, what does that do to who's willing to become a surgeon in the first place?
that's kind of like I said. Why would
Yeah.
you want to?
Why would you want to go to medicine? It's the harshest form of quality control imaginable. One mistake and you're permanently removed from the workforce. There's no remediation plan. There's no peer review committee. There's amputation. And notice when the quality controls kick in. Not before the operation, which is what we keep going back to. It's not through training standards or credential checks. It's only after, once the patient is already dead or already blind in one eye.
Well, it's like though that we mentioned in another episode, it is a science. Like there are inherent risks
Sure,
in medicine.
there are. So,
But
yeah.
you wouldn't want there not to be this idea of growth and progress. But at the same time, you don't want to be the individual who loses their life or loses an eye because somebody took liberties they shouldn't
But
have.
they shouldn't have.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Well, here's where it does get uncomfortable, and honestly, where it starts to feel less ancient than we'd like. Hammurabi's code didn't punish medical harm equally, it punished it according to the patient's social class. So, in Babylonian society was stratified into roughly 3 tiers. There's the Ahalam, I think, a free person of high status. The Mushkesno,
I am so glad that I gave these ones to you.
and that is
Wow.
a commoner or a lower class free person, and the slave, who was legally treated as property. And the code's medical laws track that hierarchy exactly. So, Holly, will you read to us
Number 2, I think.
the hierarchy and the
hierarchy of
harm?
harm? Nobleman injured or killed in surgery. The surgeon's hand is cut off. Commoner, a lesser unspecified penalty, the enslaved patient, the surgeon owed this enslaver a replacement slave or financial compensation. So wait a minute.
Yeah.
So it's not that the individual is compensated, it's the
Owner
owner
of the slave.
is
Isn't
compensated.
that wild?
So it's not corporal punishment, though.
Mm-mm.
And
They
So
didn't show that they
I
valued
guess
that
that
life.
individual, yeah.
and so is there one you could practice on more than the other, or
Well,
you had to? You know what I mean?
I
Would
mean,
you?
yeah, you would
Mhm.
wouldn't hesitate necessarily to bring in the enslaved to
Because
Yeah.
practice.
you could probably replace a slave for
Right.
the
Well,
owner of that slave.
and I don't know, were medical and surgeons in that time highly compensated? Were they in that higher class?
I don't know. That's a good
Well,
question.
there is a list of surgeon fees the same way. There's 10 shekels for an operating on a nobleman, 5 for a commoner, and 2 for a slave. The value of the life and the value of the harm were both sealed to the
And
social rank.
unfortunately,
So-
I don't know what like a shekel, like what the value, you know what I mean? So I don't know
But
where
But
I
it
was
was still
guessing
10
10
versus
10,
5
exactly.
Versus 2.
But you were
So-
asking how well are they compensated?
But I'm going to guess that the surgeon gets all of that
Yeah.
because of the way they
Right.
didn't have necessarily hospital
Yeah.
overhead and things like that. And so if that's the
Right.
case, I can practice 5
Yeah.
Mhm.
enslaved, then go and do the
The nobleman.
procedure on the nobleman and get 10
shekels.
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And I've got the 10 from the slaves,
Mhm.
and I would have money to replace those slaves because of that, and probably
It's true.
live on.
Yeah.
Glad.
Because your harm wasn't just going to be as severe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't really a story about ancient brutality that we've evolved past. It's the first documented example of something we're going to see over and over again across 4,000 years in medical law. Accountability that scales with who the patient is. We've talked about this in previous episodes where some of the harm that happens to patients are the ones that don't have as many resources.
Right.
They don't
Mhm.
know better, and they don't have the money to go
Seek the
seek
support.
the support.
It's true.
So, a slave's injury became a property lost to be reimbursed to someone else, not a harm suffered by the person it actually happened to.
It's kind of making me think about, okay, if I take my car into the shop and they destroy it, they're going to replace parts of it, right? Like if the
Well-
shop destroys my car, they are responsible for replacing it.
Right, but it should be responsible back to you. But if you were on the slave level, they would be giving your
Right.
car and everything else to
Uh-huh.
someone
To
else.
somebody else.
Yeah, good example. So, how do we get from a surgeon losing his hand in Babylon to a surgeon losing his license in modern Texas? The short answer is very, very slowly, and mostly by trading physical punishment for money. Ancient Greece and Rome started softening the corporal side of it. Greek medicine gives us the Hippocratic Oath, an ethical code rather than a criminal one. And a Roman law starts building out early negligent concepts, ways to seek compensation for harm rather than mutilation for it. Then centuries pass, the English common law becomes a real engine of change. Courts start applying general negligent principles to physicians. The idea that a doctor owes a patient a duty of care and that failing that duty is something you can sue over. And this is where we get one of the first cases known by a name, not a code carved in stone, but an actual courtroom ruling. In 1767, Slater versus Baker and Stapleton. A surgeon named Baker had rebroken a patient's healing leg
Oh,
and fitted it with an experimental stretching device
nice.
without the patient's consent and against the accepted practice of time. The English court ruled in the patient's favor, and for really the first time in Western law, said out loud that a physician can be held liable for departing from the accepted standard of care. Holly, will you read that last one for us, the Slater versus Baker slip that we handed you?
Yeah, so it's the case Slater versus Baker and Stapleton, 1767, is one of the earliest recorded English rulings to recognize that patients have a legal right to a remedy when medical treatment departs from accepted practice and is performed without consent. So this really isn't when there's an error. It's just that it departed from their normal practice.
What's considered
Yeah.
standard.
And then without consent. So what about if this patient gave consent? This doesn't address it if they gave
It doesn't
consent and
address
then
if it gave consent. It only is that if the patient wasn't
Right.
They
aware.
just took the liberties.
Yeah.
The provider or the surgeon. So here it is, 3,500 years after Hammurabi, and it's still a completely different model. No one loses a hand. Baker loses the judgment, which is money, but the core idea from Babylon survives the trip. There's an accepted standard for how a physician is supposed to treat you, and falling short of it has consequences. So this is the moment it shifts from criminal, you did a crime, you're punished, to civil, you did harm, you owe money. And it's the shift that defines almost every modern healthcare accountability system, ours included. Criminal malpractice, meaning an act that's actually prosecuted as a crime, becomes the rare exception. Civil malpractice, a lawsuit for damages, becomes the default.
So the United States inherits that English framework, and the 19th century is really where American medical malpractice law explodes. Medicine is professionalizing. The American Medical Association formed in 1847 specifically to standardize the field. And as physicians start claiming real scientific authority, patients start holding them in real professional standards. So kind of this is where a lot of times it's really based off of the standard of care at this point. Malpractice suits become common enough that physicians themselves are writing alarming letters about it. So this is now the big boom of all the malpractice suits.
And this is also when the licensing shows up. Instead of a punishment that happens after someone is already hurt, states start building a gate that's supposed to keep unqualified physicians out before they ever pick up that instrument.
Which is the accountability model we still live under today. Licensing boards, malpractice insurance, civil litigation, hospital credentialing, peer review. Layers of oversight that are almost entirely administrative and financial, not corporal, and critically, almost never criminal. We've talked several times in past cases where sometimes paying a fine doesn't deter the actual behavior.
Well, no, because if they're going to end up making more than that fine, why wouldn't they keep doing what they're doing? They're going to keep making the money.
Like the episode that we did on the pharmaceutical companies.
Yep.
So licensing boards are forming. Malpractice suits are becoming routine. On paper, the system is finally starting to look modern. And then in 1885, this whole framework runs headfirst into a man named Herman Mudgett. Did I say that right, Dina?
Yes.
Mudgett.
Looks good to me.
You know him by he looks
Sounds
good to Dina, yeah. You know him by his alias Dr. H.H. Holmes, widely credited as one of the America's first documented serial killers, and he is, without exaggeration, a physician. Holmes graduated from the University of Michigan Medical School in 1884, and even while he was a student, he was already running an insurance scam, stealing cadavers from the lab, disfiguring them, and passing them off as accident victims to collect on fraudulent policies.
Wow.
The medical training wasn't incidental to what he became, it was the toolkit. In 1885, he moved to Chicago, took a job at a pharmacy under the name Dr. H.H. Holmes, and within a couple of years, he owned the place outright. The previous owner conveniently disappeared. He used that same medical credibility to build what the newspapers would later call the Murder Castle, a block-long building with gas lines piped into sealed rooms, a dissection table, and a chute straight to the basement. I mean, talk about horror story.
Well, horror story makes it easy for him, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh.
Like, Disposal is pretty easy.
And here's the detail that belongs in this episode specifically. Medical schools in Chicago bought skeletons and anatomical specimens from Holmes during this period, and nobody ever asked him where they came from. His medical license wasn't just credentials, it was a cover.
So that's really kind of a nightmare version.
Yeah. It could be made into a good movie.
Yeah.
The licensing was supposed to be the gate that kept this unqualified or dangerous person out of medicine. Holmes proves that the gate can be walked straight through. Because in the 1880s, a license verifies that you passed your exam. It says nothing about who you actually are. There isn't a background check, tracking insurance fraud across state lines, No national database, no red flag systems between a medical school in Michigan and a pharmacy in Chicago.
It also makes me wonder about did they from this start regulations around cadavers? I don't know if that's
Because
even
I
anything.
always thought sometimes those were
Aren't-
basically
aren't-
taken for study at
Yeah.
times.
Aren't they also like
The family consents.
I know you have to, but like
Yeah.
you're saying, what
used
year
for
did that
science.
happen?
Did that
Was
requirement
it always?
of
It probably always. We'd have to look that up sometime.
Yeah,
and
we will.
no, I mean,
answer that.
just
Good,
curious.
good questions. Maybe that we will let you do a little Google search on your phone. I know I told you no phones today, but
Wow.
Holly's our researcher
In the moment
in the
researcher.
moment researcher to see if there's anything
it
about
up, Pastor.
when is the year that there were regulations around,
And it's probably further back
Ever.
than what I think because people have
Probably.
always been very protective
Right?
of
Of
their
their bodies.
bodies
Yeah.
and their family. Yeah.
Well, Holly's looking that up. What ultimately caught Holmes wasn't the medical or licensing system at all. It was an insurance fraud investigation and a jailhouse informant. The healthcare accountability structures are not what stopped him, which is the uncomfortable thread connecting this whole episode. Hammurabi's system caught harm after the fact with the body of the patient as the evidence. 19th century licensing was supposed to prevent harm before it happened, and it didn't because the system verified credentials, not character. We're going to see that exact gap again. What did you find, Holly?
Okay, so it's interesting because it says that formal legal regulations regarding human cadavers for research and education began in the 18th and 19th century with the Murder Act of 1752.
Oh, interesting. So it was
And-
before even this
Yes,
happened.
And then the British Anatomy Act of 1832, followed by the United States by the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act in 1968.
Act.
Okay,
So-
and this was happening in the United States with H.H.
yes.
Holmes.
Well,
Yes.
So
But those first two were British.
we're British,
Yes.
exactly. So the United States, this was happening in Chicago. The United States hadn't enacted anything for cadavers.
Yeah, till 1968 was when the United
And
States.
if you really think
put into
about that,
place.
that's not that long ago.
No, 68. Our parents
I know.
Yeah.
I
are
mean,
in that generation.
that
Yeah,
is
they
nuts.
are.
That's not that long ago.
I'm close to that generation.
I'm even closer.
Not even gonna go into it because I'm not that far from Holly. So
So, criminal prosecution of a physician for medical harm today almost always requires evidence of something beyond ordinary negligence. Recklessness so extreme it looks like indifference to a human life, intentional harm, or a pattern that regulators and the civil courts already failed to stop.
which is exactly the story of Christopher Dunch, right?
Yes.
Who we covered a few weeks ago. Civil malpractice suits piled up, hospital privileges got quietly revoked, and he just moved on to the next hospital. The licensing board, the modern descendants of the accountability system we've been tracing this whole episode, was slow and fragmented and reactive. It took a criminal trial and a life sentence to finally stop him. Dunch is the exception that proves the rule. The system is built on purpose to resolve medical harm financially and administratively. Criminal prosecution only shows up when every other layer has already failed. And by the time it does, real patients have already paid the price that those layers were supposed to prevent. So, in a strange way, we've built something almost like the opposite of Hammurabi's
Yeah.
code.
Things can happen time and time again.
Right. System started at the most severe punishment possible and applied it broadly. Ours starts at the mildest consequence possible, a fine, a settlement, a license review, and only escalates something resembling real accountability in the most extreme cases.
That's the
I'm
tension.
not saying we should cut off a hand, but
Well, no, and I feel like his was super, yes, just like you
Yeah.
said, super extreme.
But don't we, if we had a family member who lost their life because of malpractice,
Right.
wouldn't we want that?
Their license
License
gone.
to
We're not
gone.
saying take their
Right,
hand,
right.
but we're saying
And
why are they
we don't want them
practicing
practicing
again?
medicine.
And the thing is, in that time of Babylonia, they didn't have
The Babylonians, is that
Babylonians, yeah, they didn't have necessarily other means to take
Right.
a license.
That's
Right.
true.
Right. And so I'm
Yeah.
glad that we have advanced that we don't have to take in hand, but in a way we are taking their livelihood.
Well,
And we
true.
should. And
Only,
we are
only
we
if
take
the
the
fine
license
is
to-
substantial enough, right?
Yeah.
And we still haven't been able to resolve this. The corporal punishment for every bad outcome is obviously not justice. It doesn't account for genuine complications, because those will happen. Just like if somebody lost their hand and it was a genuine complication. So you have to
Right.
weed all those out. The fact that it does involve real risk, but a system where it takes dozens of injured patients and years of documented harm before anyone loses the right to practice isn't justice either. No,
Well,
but
and I
yeah.
was just going to say, with advanced science, we also take on some responsibility as the patient to better understand our risks.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
Right.
true.
As long as we have been informed.
Informed,
You're
yeah.
right.
But I
yes.
think that that society has evolved in a way where we have to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, we've gone away from just automatically trusting everything that a person in a higher position tells us. Like, we're now in a society where we have to question.
Right. Well, and
Right.
I think it's good. It's a good approach that the patient needs to have some ownership of their
Oh,
health.
of course, for
And
sure.
so, but because there are things that are now just common understandings of medical, we better know what kind of questions to
Yeah.
ask to be able to be.
Well, and I
involved.
think if you even think now too, like, we have more tools to be able to
Mm-hmm.
research as
Research.
Right.
well to help us go into a
Mhm.
conversation with a provider more educated.
Yeah.
But we haven't been able to build a system or a version that catches it first. Like,
Yeah.
the only way you can do that is by cutting off the hand the first time,
Yeah.
when not every case is that way. So
That's
how do you
true.
get
So
to
how
the
do you-
first or the second?
Yeah.
It's true. And that's a real pattern underneath everything that we've covered today. Healthcare has never been a system without problems. Every era we walked through today had them. That's what's actually changed over 4,000 years isn't the presence of failure, it's the form the response takes and how long it takes to arrive. And it almost always arrives after the harm, not before.
Mhm.
So that is our history lesson for today. This is a shorter episode. We didn't really get into a lot of weeds. We just wanted to have it be kind of an overview. But for patients who are listening, the version of accountability protecting you today isn't corporal and it isn't automatic. It's built out of licensing boards and hospital credentialing committees and civil courts. And every piece of that system depends on harm being reported, tracked, and taken seriously the first time, not the fifth, which we see often. For healthcare leaders listening, this history is a 4,000-year argument for why your credentialing process, your peer reviews, and your reporting culture can't be the box you check after something goes wrong. They're the only thing standing between a bad outcome and the next dunce. Hammurabi's system failed because it relied on punishment after the fact. Ours can still fail the same way, dressed up with better paperwork. For anyone who's ever been hurt by the system and been told there's nothing that can be done, there's a reason the earliest law we have on this subject exists at all. Someone 4,000 years ago, Dina kind of touched on this,
Mhm.
someone 4,000 years ago decided that medical harm couldn't just be absorbed in silence.
Right.
Obviously, the eye situation, somebody probably
Which
lost
means
an eye.
somebody lost an eye and somebody lost their
A
life.
Yeah.
Right.
That belief is the whole reason the show exists. Dina, Holly, any last words?
I mean, you said it was short. and
It is
whatnot,
short.
But I found it very interesting to go back. You do think of the way people used to practice. You kind of wonder which time is better
Mhm.
to be in. Well, I think we know which time.
I'm like, I
It was better to be.
I don't think I
I'm
wondered
like,
that.
I don't,
No.
I don't question
Are you
that.
sure? You didn't want to be a gladiator.
No. Can you see me in that time?
I cannot see myself in that time. No, we're in better times.
Yeah.
But at what point do we stop giving as many chances?
What is shocking to me is that it is a 4,000-year
Right.
old.
Mhm.
And yes, it's changed and it's advanced, but a regulation that existed 4,000 years ago. And have we really come 4,000 years in advancement of that law? I don't know.
That's a very.
That's a good question.
I know how I want to answer it, but it's not necessarily right. But it's good
Yeah.
to leave it lingering for anyone to think about that.
For anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
There are links to everything we referenced today in the show. The Dark Side will be back next week. Subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and if something feels wrong, say something. We'll see you next time because there's always more.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, folks. Thank you for listening to The Dark Side of Healthcare, presented by Behind the Business of Healthcare.